Content warning. This episode discusses financial stress, scarcity, generational poverty, and emotional experiences related to money. Please listen with care. I want to begin with a question that often opens more than it answers. What did money feel like in your home growing up? Not just what was said about money, but the emotional atmosphere around it. For many people, money carried a lot of tension. It showed up in stress, limitation, whether there would be enough. And then for others, it was something that wasn't discussed at all, which created its own kind of uncertainty, which was definitely the case for me. And for some, even in stable environments, there were quiet rules about what was acceptable to want, to earn, or to become. When I reflect on my own experience, I can see that money always seemed to have an emotional charge. There were moments of pressure, moments where stability felt fragile, and a consistent message, both spoken and unspoken, about what was safe and what might be considered too much. What I didn't realize at the time is that long before I ever earned any money, I had already formed a relationship with it. And that relationship followed me into adulthood, shaping how I made decisions, how I priced my work, how I allowed myself to expand. Because your money story, it doesn't begin when you earn. It begins much earlier, when you first observe. Welcome to the Inspired Podcast. I'm Andrea De La Cerda, CEO, founder, and business coach, and someone who has had to actively dismantle and rebuild my own relationship with money in order to grow. Today, we're talking about your money story and why it matters more than most realize. Research in behavioral finance shows that up to 90% of our financial decisions are driven actually by emotion and not logic at all. That means even the most strategic, intelligent person can find themselves repeating financial patterns that just don't make sense on paper, because those patterns are rooted in belief systems that were really formed early in life. There's also a body of research around what psychologists call money scripts, or unconscious beliefs about money, that develop in childhood and continue to influence our behavior into adulthood. These scripts often fall into patterns like money avoidance, maybe money worship, money vigilance, or money status, or a mix of all of these. And unless they're examined, they tend to just repeat, regardless of how much you earn. It makes no difference what your salary is. So this conversation is not just about money. It's also about identity and conditioning and the internal frameworks that shape your capacity to earn, hold, and grow wealth. For me, this wasn't theoretical. I can see now that I carried a set of beliefs that shaped how I showed up, both in my career and in my business, especially in the early years. There were moments where I was doing really high-level work, creating real value for clients, and still undercharging. Not because I didn't understand the marketplace, or it just was truly because I didn't fully see myself. I would price my services conservatively, over-deliver to compensate, and then hesitate to increase my rates, even when I knew that I should. And even when others around me were doing it. There was a subtle but persistent internal dialogue saying, is this too much? Will they still say yes? Because I don't want to lose the opportunity. If you can relate to this, you know what I mean. And what I understand now is that those thoughts weren't really about the client. They were really more about my relationship with my own self-worth. Because when your internal identity hasn't caught up to your external capability, you will unconsciously create a gap. You'll give more than you charge. You will hesitate to ask for more. You will shrink at the point of receiving. And for a long time, that was a ceiling in my business. It was not a strategy issue. It was a belief issue. This is where the conversation becomes bigger than any one person's experience, because there is clear data showing that women on average charge less than men for similar services and are less likely to negotiate compensation. And studies have found that women are significantly more likely to undervalue their work, particularly in service-based industries, which directly impacts lifetime earnings and wealth accumulation. And there's also research showing that women tend to reinvest more into relationships and responsibilities, often prioritizing stability and support over expansion and risk to themselves. So when you combine that with early conditioning about money, which is about being agreeable or not asking for too much, not being greedy, you start to see how deeply this is really wired. And for women who grew up in environments with financial stress or scarcity, those patterns can be even more pronounced because money becomes associated with things like safety, of course, and stability, survival, emotional stability. Earning more isn't just a business goal. This is a nervous system experience. Undercharging is one of the clearest expressions of a misaligned money story. And it rarely presents as a simple lack of knowledge. Often it shows up as pricing lower than the value that was delivered, maybe adding more to justify the price, throwing in those freebies, hesitating to increase rates because you're maybe feeling uncomfortable and even receiving payment. I've worked with women who are generating massive impact, helping clients grow their businesses by 50% or more, improving their operations, transforming their lives, and still pricing themselves at a fraction of what that value is to the client. Not because they lack skill, but because somewhere internally, they're still negotiating their permission to receive. And until that shifts, the pattern continues. You grow, but not fully. You expand, but with resistance. Shifting your money story requires both awareness and embodied change. It starts with identifying your beliefs. When I ask these questions, try and be really honest about your first thought. Here we go. What do you really believe about money? What do you believe about people who have money? And what do you believe about yourself in relation to money? Then trace maybe where those beliefs came from. Because when you see that, when a belief was learned, it becomes something you can actually start to question. But this awareness alone is not enough. You need new experiences that create for you and your subconscious new evidence. Raising your prices, having the conversation about that, tracking your finances consistently, allowing yourself to receive payment without immediately giving more. This is where your nervous system comes in. Because if earning more feels unsafe, your system is always going to try to regulate you back to what is familiar. So now the work becomes expanding your capacity, not just intellectually, but emotionally. How much more are you willing to receive? How much more is your nervous system willing to allow you to receive? So now I want to talk about some of the really powerful modalities that can support this deeper rewiring of the subconscious brain. CBT, or talk therapy, is especially with a financial or maybe a trauma-informed lens, helps you process some early experiences and understand your patterns. There's also hypnosis, of course, which works directly with the subconscious mind to reprogram some of those deeply held beliefs about money, worth, self-worth, and safety. EFT, also called emotional freedom technique, it stands for, and also tapping, if you've maybe heard it called tapping, combines that cognitive awareness with the somatic release. So it helps reduce that emotional charge around those money triggers. Somatic experience or nervous system work can support your body in feeling safe in that expansion, receiving, and also in that financial growth. Journaling and cognitive reframing allows you to consciously rewrite those narratives, create new belief pathways for yourself. And then just business coaching or identity coaching can help you bridge that gap between mindset and action, helps you implement new behaviors aligned with your growth. I have and continue to practice all of these at the same time. This is not about choosing one path. It's about recognizing that deep patterns require deeper tools and your willingness to be open to that. If you want to go deeper into this work, I will include a few powerful book resources also in the episode notes. Many of these around money, ideas about it, how to identify limiting beliefs around money, and how to reframe it and reprogram our subconscious minds to be okay with it. So take a look in the episode notes and you'll find them. Here's what I want to leave with you. You're not starting from zero when it comes to money. You're starting from just a story. And that story from early on has shaped your decisions, your patterns, and your outcomes. But this story does not have to be permanent. It can be examined. It can be challenged. It can be rewritten, not through force, but through awareness, intention, and aligned, thoughtful action. Your action step this week is to identify one belief about money that you are ready to release. It could be some things that might resonate. Money is the root of all evil. More money, more problems. I don't know if these are some quotes maybe that you, or sayings that you can resonate with, but there could be other beliefs as well. And then identify a new belief that aligns with actually who you are, who you're becoming, and who you want to be. If anything in this episode resonated with you, I would really love to hear what you're uncovering. Please DM me on Instagram. My handle is AndreaDLC_coach, and share one belief that you're shifting. Because money is not just something you earn, it's something you learn to hold with clarity, confidence, and capacity. Until next time, take care.